Okay.
Obviously, it's a lot about what you can control, but your opposition this week has had lots of bad news for them. How do you treat that?
Oh well, the only confirmation that I've had so far is that Jack Grimes won't play. Trengo's going to appeal his suspension, so we'll let that take its course. And a lot of reports about Jamar, but we're not sure whether he'll play or not at this stage. You might have more information on that than I do at this stage, but heard reports he's out, but I haven't heard Melbourne rule him out yet. So, but if those three don't play and Tom Scully's not ready yet, then I see that as they'll start to have some injury concerns as we've had all year. The four I mentioned from Melbourne are very good players and important to their structure, but Hamish McIntosh, Ryan Basanack, Levi Greenwood, Matt Campbell, been extremely important parts of our structure as well, and we haven't had them for one game this year. So we haven't used injuries as an excuse, and I know Melbourne certainly won't be either.
Do you see in some ways you're very similar profile of lists, coaches in their second, third years? There's something very similar about the two squads? Yeah,
I think that the fans of both clubs will be looking forward to a long and engaging rivalry between the two clubs, and we felt that last year that there were a lot of comparisons between Melbourne's list and our list, and that's fair enough, because if you look at the age profiles and the experience profiles, and even the coaching panels are fairly similar in terms of experience. So I think that's a fair comparison to draw, and we always look forward to playing them.
So you're talking about the rivalry, but you've had it open for a fair few games now. What do you think it is?
Oh well, I can't speak about any prior performances other than the ones I've been involved in, and we played them twice last year, and they were both pretty good games, pretty competitive games, and we were fortunate enough to come out on top on both those occasions. But I think watching the game last week that against Adelaide, Melbourne were just outstanding. So I don't think you can draw too many conclusions from the previous encounters. I think they're obviously in terrific form. They've got a lot of really dangerous players. So we're more focused on what they've been able to do in the last 2 weeks rather than what happened last year.
Did Levi play on the weekend, and how did he come through that game?
Yeah, he played. It was his first game back, and we eased him through that game, and he played quite well, and had 21 possessions and moved around and played good game time. But something we've got to be really careful with Levi is that he's so competitive, and he's such a good athlete that he'll feel like he's absolutely ready to play. But we'll be cautious with his return, and if we name him in the side this week, it'll be because we're convinced that he's absolutely ready to play. I think we can be seduced at times to bringing players back because they're so important to you and you can rush them back too quickly. So we'll have a good look at him at training today and make a really informed decision on whether we bring him in.
And Cunnington sub last 2 weeks, I think. What do you do with him this week?
Yeah, well, he'll be named in our 22 again. So he's a really important part of our present and our future. So he's had an interrupted pre-season, but we think he's starting to get back to full fitness now. So we don't want the same player to be sub for months on end, but at the moment he can. That's not a bad role for him, right where he's at the moment. But we think he's getting his fitness back to pretty much where it should be. So that'll give us more flexibility in how we use him.
And Jack Siebel, because I think he was on for Cunnington each time. Where's Jack?
Yeah, well, Jack hurt his calf the previous week against Port Adelaide, so we had no option to sub him off last week. So that was purely coincidence that it's the two of them in the last 2 weeks. We chose to do it with Jack because it was like for like. Ben Cunnington could come in and play his role, but the week before it was a forced substitute with Jack hurting his calf.
Given those comparisons that you sort of mentioned before, almost symbolically, I suppose, does this become a bigger game, maybe even in terms of the fans and their expectations, because you're those two younger clubs trying to push through?
Well, I don't think either club would be happy with their performances against the really top-notch sides right at the moment. So that's been certainly the case in 2011. So this is a good chance for the fans of both clubs to get a really good gauge of where their current list sits against another team that's pretty similar in terms of age and experience. So I think that's a valid comparison to make. But this game's no more important than last week's or next week's.
How are the frustration levels at the moment with with the team. Is it more frustrating that you can't get a full team on the park, or is it frustrating that the fact that the team that you have got aren't able to put 4 quarters together?
Yeah, it's more the latter. I'm not concerned, not frustrated by injuries. I mean, every coach would love to coach their best available side, but I mean that's we play a contact sport where injuries are part and parcel of the game. So you're kidding yourself as a coach if you get frustrated about not having your best 22 available, because it rarely happens. It's more the latter, being that we've been able to put good patches of footy together, but certainly it's been nowhere near good enough for the level of expectation that we set for ourselves. It hasn't been good enough to compete against those good sides. So we've let ourselves down in some games. Yeah, I mean, we've had a tough start to the year in terms of a fixture, but you've got to play those sides at some point. So we've been disappointed with our performance to this point, and we're looking at turning it around really quickly.
And how do you fix that? Is it hard work on the track that fixes that, or do you have to go in and change the whole mindset of the guys?
No, I don't have to do any work on their mindset. I mean, I've never questioned their effort. I mean, I would be frustrated if I was sitting here saying they're not working hard enough, they're not trying hard enough. They're doing all those things. So I'm confident with that, but we're just not executing our game plan well enough. And we could be sitting here, and Lindsay Thomas could be sitting leading the Coleman medal, at the moment if he kicks straight. So all you can do with that is go back and work as hard as you can on the track. And I know that Lindsay's doing that with his goal kicking. We're doing that with our skill execution. We're looking at some of the defensive parts of our game that need tidying up. So, we can only do that on the track. But in terms of my frustration levels, that's not an issue at all.
On the Trengo one, obviously I know it's before the appeal sports, so there's probably little you can say, but a lot of players at other clubs have suggested there's confusion about exactly what you can and can't do. Are you surprised by the way it's been handled?
No, I don't think there's confusion at all. I think the AFL made their stance, and they made a rule change for this particular incident. They made their stance very clear. So our players are absolutely clear as to what the rule is. I can completely understand the level of frustration amongst fans at the moment, and certainly amongst some players. But I think we should be really clear. Your frustration and anger should be directed towards the rule, not towards the decision the tribunal made. I think that the AFL made things really clear as to how they deal with those particular incidents. Now, you can agree with the rule or not, but I think that they've adjudicated the rule as they said they would.
So is it again a sort of case where you have to take the responsibility if the player gets injured, you have to take on board that will come back to haunt you if it goes to the tribunal? Yeah,
provided that you've got a duty of care to a player to make sure he doesn't get injured. Now, I think it's very difficult for players. I'm sitting here saying it's easy, because we play an aggressive contact sport, and part of that is being aggressive in the tackle. And I think that the tackle that Trengove laid was an aggressive, good tackle. But in modern football, you have a duty of care to your opponent, and if that opponent's head hits the ground, then it's going to be a tough situation to try and defend.
Philosophically, you agree with that? The duty of care argument?
It's a really I'd hate to get to the stage where we take the aggressive actions out of our game. So I think that we've always coached our players to be really aggressive when they lay tackles, to really show that aggression. But we don't want injured players. I mean, we don't want players concussed. Now, I think the AFL have made it as clear as they can that those particular dangerous tackles they'll deal with as they have this week. So I would reiterate that direct your anger towards the rule, not towards the decision that's been made.
You were at Collingwood when the Maxwell thing happened, wasn't you? And that's sort of where it started, I think, this whole idea about you hurt someone, well then the consequences are yours.
Well, that one was a little bit different because Nick chose to bump, and if you choose to bump and you hit someone in the head, then you suffer the consequences. So I mean that rule is very clear as well. The hip and shoulder hasn't been outlawed from our game. You can still hip and shoulder, but you can't. If you hip and shoulder and you hit that player in the head, then there'll be a consequence to that at the tribunal. And it's the same with the tackles. You can lay an aggressive tackle, but if if there's two actions, or you pin the arms and slam the player's head into the ground, there's going to be a consequence to that too.
There's been a fair bit of negativity about the start of the season, but you've been happy with the form of Daniel Wells. It's been pretty good, especially the last few games.
Yeah, he has. He's been terrific, and I thought his game last week was a really good game, because I don't think there's any hotter cauldron in AFL footy at the moment than Geelong at Skilled Stadium. So we were under fire in that game, and he was clearly our best player. And against a really strong Geelong midfield, he stood up and played really well. So, he's certainly holding up his end of the bargain at the moment.
Aaron Edwards, is he doing enough in the VFL last week to win?
You reckon 10 goals is enough? He got the result in terms of his goals, but he's defended extremely well as a forward. So, when we had the ball at North Ballarat, he kicked goals, and when we didn't have it, he defended really well. So, he's done everything he possibly can to earn a recall. He'll certainly be in our selection mix. And in a lot of ways, he was unlucky to lose his place in the first place. We had to change our forward structure, and that meant that Aaron slipped out of our side. But his attitude's been absolutely outstanding since he's been in the VFL, and I've been really impressed with Aaron in my time since I've been at the club. I think he's turned a lot of things around in his football, but also in his life. So it's a real credit to him.
And how's Lockie?
He'll train today, and we're anticipating that he'll be fine. We'll name him in our side. He was touch and go last week, just missed. We erred on the side of caution, so we anticipate he'll be fine.
I'll throw it up now, then I'll probably follow up over the next month and the month after that. Round 3 was your bye. You haven't got another one, I think, until round 21, so you've got an 18-week stint, the longest stint of any club in the league. How are you going to handle fatigue over the next month or so? Are you going to start to taper off players and maybe start to give them a bit of a break yourself?
Yeah, well, we set in term a long-term management plan for all our players at the start of the year, and we had plenty of warning that was going to be our lot, that we'd have an 18 game uninterrupted footy. But that's our management of that won't change. I mean, the bye's really only come in the split round the last few years anyway. So players traditionally have had to play their 22 games straight up. So no, we don't see that as a problem for us, and we'll manage individual player loads as we planned at the start of the year.